welcome back to the David67 Celtic News YouTube channel. A rather sad and very disappointed David67 after a rather humiliating, pathetic, pitiful performance by Celtic yesterday afternoon in the rain and plastic pitch of Kilmarnock. Very disappointing 2-1 loss with some rather awful performances from several players, and primarily for me, Nat Phillips, and extremely poor tactics, setup, selections by Brendan Rodgers. It kind of felt that the players and Rodgers had their head more fixated on the firing match in the midweek rather than concentrating on seeing through a good first half performance into victory in the second half. So today's video going to be a reflection on yesterday's performance, who, if anyone, did well over the whole game, and where the blame most lies for Celtic's game yesterday. As I said, first half, good performance by Celtic, started on top, tons and tons of pressure, good chances for Lewis Palmer hit the post at the back post after very narrowly missed the flick on from a nice cross by Mikey Johnston. First half, Lewis Palmer looked quite good down the left wing. Mikey Johnston came and went on the right side. Couple of nice cut-ins, couple of nice crosses. However, he never seemed to be able to beat the Kilmarnock defenders to get to the byline or cut into the box properly, and it seemed like 90% of his work was down the wing and not terribly dangerous. Lewis Palmer seemed to be a wee bit off colour, but did contribute a few nice corners and crosses and passes into the box. Was a wee bit disappointing. He wasted a good couple of chances. It did look like it would be easier for him to score with his left foot rather than trying to knock it in awkwardly with his right foot when he slid into the box for Johnston's cross. Unluckily, Lewis Palmer just caught the wrong side of the post and it bounced out. Celtic had some nice saves from the Kilmarnock goalkeeper, Matt Riley, a couple of nice shots. The Kilmarnock goalkeeper in the first half had a lot to do and did it very well. And for that first 45 minutes, Celtic pretty much on top most of the time. There were a couple of scares in defence. Nat Phillips, for me, totally useless. Goodness knows why he is in Celtic's team. He's only on the books at Celtic for a couple more weeks. I fully accept that CCV wasn't worthwhile being risked for this game. However, we have two very good centre-backs on the bench or in the squad who don't seem under Rodgers to be able to get even half a chance to show how good they are. Lagerbielke and Nawrocki. Nawrocki looked very good in the couple of games he had before he got injured. Gustav Lagerbielke, thrown in at the deep end, for me got better and better. We were the knockback with the game in Feyenoord, where he got 2 yellow cards, gave away a penalty and got sent off. However, over the course of Lagerbielke's career, he had 5 clean sheets in defence, primarily working alongside Liam Scales. For me, the continued absence of Nawrocki and Lagerbielke from the side and from the bench is completely inexplicable and totally and down to Rodgers. He has grossly mismanaged 2 potential star players for Celtic, players under contract with Celtic for a long time, for several years, and seems fixated on giving Nat Phillips every possible chance to get himself in the shop window for a better contract from Liverpool or a transfer to some other team. Goodness knows why he is starting. He was slow, couldn't defend for toffee, caught in the ball so many times, useless with the ball at his feet. Several times Joe Hart, Liam Scales passed to him, and they got caught in the ball, dithered, passed back to Scales or Johnston or Hart, putting them under even more pressure. He, for me, was largely at fault for the first goal, which was an own goal. Not just that he scored the own goal when he really should be knocking the ball wide. He seemed um, only able to hit the ball straight into the middle of the goal. Seemed to be making no effort to hit the ball to the side from the way he was angled and the way he was coming at the ball. And also, Celtic defended very poorly down the left side the whole game. Liam Scales, I think, was caught out for pace and positioning on many occasions. I think partly due to the fact that he didn't have someone like Lagabielka or CCV covering in behind him. I think Scales didn't know where to start, didn't know where to get to. Greg Taylor looked like he was being out-muscled and outpaced down our left side on a continuous basis. And I think it's a little coincidence that all of Kilmarnock's real chances came down the left and were largely due to Scales not quite knowing how to defend, getting caught out of position, also being too slow to come across, and Nat Phillips just dithering in the middle of the box, completely useless. We may as well not actually have had Nat Phillips on the pitch. May even have done better defending with this 10 men. As Phillips, for me, useless. Shouldn't see a Celtic strip. May as well just send him back now, I think, to the last couple of weeks before Christmas, so he can have a nice time with his family, and then get back to playing for Liverpool in training. As I doubt that on the basis of his few games with Celtic, Jurgen Klopp will be looking in any way to give him a new contract. I think Klopp almost certainly will be kicking him out the door to save £62,000 a week of Liverpool's wage budget. It seemed to me a rather odd decision to start with Phillips and Scales and Taylor on that side. I think Alistair Johnson perfectly well did a good job. He was one of the few Celtic players I thought who gave a good effort first half and second half. He seemed to be the only player really battling in the second half. Joe Hart did make a few good saves. I thought he was probably at fault in part for the first goal. Never seems to come across to pick up crosses or balls across the box. Second goal, really questionable. I think he went in a bit too early. Should have stayed bigger, made it more difficult for Kennedy to score that goal. However, some really awful performance by Phillips, Scales and Taylor defending down the left wing and their right wing, our left wing, into the box. Cost us the goal again and again. Taylor out-muscled, out-paced. I think it would be far better to have started with Lagabielka and Navrocki. Scales, a more combative, stronger, battling left back who would just have stayed defending and would have got on top of the player, maybe even given him something to slow himself down a bit. And that was shown in my predicted or my suggested lineup in my short video that I put out on Friday evening, Saturday morning. For me, I've been a great advocate for Tomoki Iwata. He was rather quiet and anonymous in the first half, and for the part of the second half he was on for. Seemed more that Celtic weren't really using him that much in terms of the way they were starting up. Phillips and Scales never really looking to use Tomoki Iwata as the outball. Not sure whether that was down to Rodgers' tactics, whether that was down to Iwata, but I would have wanted him maybe just to get himself involved more in the game. as he showed against Hibs and has shown in a couple of other substitute performances this year. He is a very skillful passer and creator, but never really seemed to get on the ball. McGregor and O'Reilly were good in the first half, but completely anonymous in the second half. And when the chips are down, we really do need our top players, such as McGregor and O'Reilly, stepping forward. I can see in the old days people like Neil Lennon, Paul Lambert, Alan Thompson, Scott Brown, Stilian Petrov, etc., all taking a step forward, um, sticking out their chest and getting a grip of the team in the second half, getting grip on the bully tactics of Kilmarnock. Second half, Kilmarnock all over Celtic. They outplayed us, outran us, outstrengthened us, outbullied us, outcreated us. It was a pitiful, pathetic performance by Celtic in the second half. And you really are needing your star players, your captain, your senior players, and most particularly a manager to do something to get back on top of things. It was rather sad that Scott Brown was in the commentary booth as a pundit for Sky Sports rather than on the pitch, because I can't see him allowing his Celtic team, the captain or a player, to let another team outplay them and outperform and outtry them so much in a half of football. So where do we go from here? I think it's a poor half in a poor game. I don't think, as a few other Celtic fan sites on the internet and YouTube are going, that this is a question of throwing half the team out as they are useless. I think actually Celtic had more than enough talent on the pitch and on the bench to win that game. I think a lot of it goes down to some poor selections by Rodgers, several players looking rather tired, again, which is largely down to Rodgers, both in terms of lack of rotation of players. There seemed to be no real change in the way we were going to play at the start of the match or when things started going wrong at the start of the second half. Rodgers just seemed to stand there in his anorak, miserable under the pouring rain in Kilmarnock, never really did anything to change. Did bring on Kyogo, but had Kyogo so deep that he was useless. I thought Yang actually came on and showed a wee bits of good energy and good attack. Then, of course, got thumped by a Kilmarnock defender and seems to have suffered a shoulder injury. James Forrest came on, a couple of wee nice touches, but no real threat. Second half, as I said, Mikey Johnson completely anonymous. Lewis Palmer drifted out the game. Seemed to get drifted out more and more out of the game as the game went on. He wasn't really a threat in any way in the second half, but then partly that's due to the lack of passes and crosses and balls into the feet from the wide players and from midfield. Second half, as I say, the only player I would give any kind of pass marks to was Alistair Johnston. Every other player for me was 5 out of 10 or below. Alistair Johnston, I would have given a 6.5 out of 10. Very noticeable that Kilmarnock didn't really get any kind of success down his side. One can argue that Johnston maybe doesn't come across quite enough to defend when things are being stretched out on the opposite side of the pitch. He, of course, did actually have that rather miraculous block of the shot with his shoulder and upper back that stopped the goal in the first half. And so Alistair Johnston, for me, the only player to get pass marks. Would be delighted to see what other people have thought regarding the performances, where the blame lies, what the answers are. I do think, however, that, as I said earlier, I think there's more than enough talent in this squad for Celtic to bounce back, for Celtic to perform better. I think also that when Maeda, Hitati and Abada are back in the side, when CCV is fully fit with a strong supporter to his side, such as Lagbielko or Novrocky, things will be much better. I think temporarily moving to Liam Scales to left back would be a very good option defensively. Don't think we'll lose anything out terribly much in terms of creation, as yesterday Taylor was rarely seen outside his own half. For me, he's one player who very clearly has gone backwards under Brendan Rodgers. I think Ange Postecoglou devised a way of playing that very much suited Tony Ralston, Alistair Johnston, and Greg Taylor. Rodgers seems to have gone back to a different system that is wasting Greg Taylor, kind of how Greg Taylor was from the very start of his Celtic career. And it's yet another example of, for me, Brendan Rodgers coming in, messing about with tactics and formations and ways of playing that were doing exceedingly well under Ange Postecoglou, and not training the players properly or well enough in the way that he wants them to play. Or, as I've said a few times, it's kind of like putting square pegs in round holes, which just doesn't fit, just doesn't work. You've got to get your best out of your players, and that certainly is not something Rodgers has done. One can say that maybe some of the players brought in the summer aren't good enough to start for Celtic. Well, to be fair to the recruitment team, to the board, to the scouting teams, etc., several of those players were brought in more to be the backup players and development players. Young players like Tilio, Yang, Odin Thiago Home, all brought in to get better and better. Rodgers does not seem to have made any of those players better and better, despite having them for the best part of 5 months at Celtic. Players such as Nawrocki, Lagerbielke, Palma were brought in to start. Unfortunately, Nawrocki's missed most of the season through injury. Lewis Palma has, for the most part, looked good. Lagerbielke, for me, looked very good. Got better and better and better, and then seemed to get dumped by Brendan Rodgers and completely forgotten about. I think Lagerbielke's been on the bench once or twice since his very good spell at Celtic early in the season, and Nawrocki has been on the bench a couple of times, but not brought on. As I said, Rodgers seems to put all his eggs in the basket of Nat Phillips. He's been the one who's been on the bench. He's the one that's come on a couple of times as a replacement, and as a result, Nawrocki and Lagerbielke just got stale and stagnant on the bench or training at Lennoxtown. And for me, Rodgers needs to take about 75% of the blame for how Celtic have been over the last month. I always am quite disappointed in Brendan Rodgers' post-match press conferences and post-match TV interviews, as it always seems to be somebody else's fault, always the players' fault. They're not brave enough. Heard not enough effort, not enough fights. Well, for goodness sake, you're the one who's actually supposed to be coaching the players, managing the players, geeing them up. You did a jolly good job for me at St Johnstone, but yesterday you just seemed to mope about in the rain, miserable under his hood of his anorak, and never seemed to be doing anything to change the game. I suspect that his halftime talk was rather uninspiring from the way that Celtic came out. I'm told that the halftime talk that Derek McInnes, the Kilmarnock manager, gave was extremely noisy, extremely aggressive, and by goodness did he get his players playing in the second half. Rodgers seemed to have his players switch off in the second half, and he, to all intent, also switched off in the second half. We do have the game against Feyenoord on Wednesday, which would be a great way for Celtic to come back. Good performance against a very good team, giving us the energy to take on Hearts, Dundee, and etc. in preparation for the vital game against Rangers at the end of the year, and then St Mirren at the start of the year, then our mid-season break. I would expect that after the mid-season break, we'll have Abada and Hatate and Maeda all back in the team, assuming that Maeda isn't whisked off to the Asian Cup. I suspect that Celtic will have a couple of new signings ready for the return from the winter break, with a game against Bucky Thistle, and then several important league games after that. We are now just 5 points ahead of Rangers, who have a game in hand, and so potentially when we go into the game against Rangers, we might only have a 2-point lead, assuming that Rodgers can turn things around. And for me, he has got to turn things around with the assistance of senior players like Cal McGregor, primarily as a captain, Joe Hart, CCV, Kyogo. They've got to stick their chests out, wear their Celtic badge on their heart and on their sleeve, and get on with changing Celtic's energy, Celtic's fortune, and making successful the club and the team again. So a rather miserable video today. Would be delighted to see what others feel in their own. So pop those into the comments. If anybody does like the style and presentation and the content, I would be delighted if you would subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Completely free of charge, no obligation, and it does make me so happy when my subscriber numbers go up by one in a day. So for today, thanks for listening, thanks for watching. Chat again tomorrow, and in the words of the song, the sun will come out tomorrow, except it's not going to come out tomorrow. It's going to pour it down with rain again and be miserable where I am, but in our hearts, tomorrow is another day, and tomorrow will be a sunny day for Celtic and the future. Goodbye, and hail, hail.